All right, we're about to do some fun stuff because we're learning how to do two-dimensional transforms, which is then going to lead to three-dimensional transforms, which is then going to lead to animation and transitions and all kinds of fun stuff. But let's start off with two-dimensional transforms. And two dimensions means that we're going to be able to move it along. If you've done any geometry, the x and y axis, and the x axis is horizontal and the y-axis is vertical. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use a what's called a transform rule, and then we're going to decide on a specific, I guess, sub instruction whether we are trying to move the element, whatever element we want, whether we're trying to move it, whether we're trying to make it bigger, which is called scale, whether we're trying to rotate it, which is basically like twisting it, um, like tilting it, or then skewing it means, you know what, we're just going to go and do it. Okay, we'll do this and show. It'll be a picture's worth 1,000 words. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, as you can see here, I have two boxes that I created, and you'll start with. It's just a border, some padding, some margin, background color of yellow, and then I have another box underneath it which has the ID of transforming, but there's nothing, there are no tags on that yet. So it says help, this web developer is moving me around using CSS. You'll see why I did that in a second. This is not unlike a lot of the other stuff we're doing with CSS3, which is you need to be aware of your browsers and how much you want to make sure that the code you're doing is compliant with older browsers. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to use translate. And so let me paste in this code. You see here I have a couple of prefixes to make it compliant with IE9. These are WebKit prefix to make the code compliant with Safari. These are actually rotate codes. But you're going to have to decide how much you want to make that work in terms of putting in code. So I'm going to take those out for right now. You can look at the instructions to see what prefixes you need to put and how to modify. But basically, we would just take this standard code and then put the prefixes on it to make it compliant. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating a transform code, and it's kind of like those pseudo classes that we did, like hover and focus. So we say transform colon, and then what we want to do is we want to translate whatever image we are attaching this to, or element we're attaching it to, and we're moving it 200 pixels this way and 150 pixels this way. So 250 pixels along the x-axis and 150 pixels along the y-axis. So watch this. Remember how it started? So now what we did is it was right here, and we moved it 250 pixels this way and 150 pixels that way. All right, so that's the start. Now that's translate. The next thing we're going to do is scale. Okay, and what we do is scale is we change this to scale, and then we're basically saying how much bigger, how much higher, and how much wider than the original do we want it to be. So let's say we want to make it twice as big as wide and twice as high. Okay, so what we're doing is we're going to take whatever image this is attached to, and we're going to make it twice as wide and twice as high. Okay, so you can see that the image is no longer there, right? We've made it bigger, we made it wider, and we made it higher. Okay, now what we didn't do is we didn't leave in the moving it to a different place, so it's just fitting in its space. It's making it bigger and wider. You can see that part of it is overlapping the image to the top, part of it is going off the screen. Okay, and so you'll have to position things appropriately. This stuff all becomes really important when we're doing animation, but I want to show you. So that's scale. Okay, the next thing we want to do is rotate. All right, so transform, rotate, and this is where we're going to rotate a certain number of degrees. Okay, so let's say we want to take our image and we want to rotate it 45 degrees. So 4 or 5 DEG. Okay, now we're going to take our the image that we start off with and rotate it. All right, so remember it started like this. We go back. If I take this out of here, it's right here, right? This is the image we're working with. And then I put in my code, and I'm going to rotate it 45 degrees. And you can see it twist. It's pretty cool, right? So let's do that. Let's get it upside down. Let's do 145 degrees. See? You can start to see how interesting this can be in terms of being able to play around with images and whatnot. All right. So let's click edit there. Okay. So then that's transformed. Now the next thing is skew, and skew's pretty cool too. Skew is you're going to have two, X angle and Y angle. And let's just say we're going to do 20 degrees on the X angle and 45 degrees on the Y angle. This is just something to play around with. And so what you can do is not just rotate it, but you can kind of, it's skewing is the best way to express it. So you can see, took the image. It's not just rotating, but it is rotating a little bit along the horizontal axis, I suppose, and then the vertical axis. So what you're doing is skewing it, and you can play around with these. So the four things I want you to do are to do your translate, your scale, your rotate, and your skew. Okay, and then the next lesson is going to be doing 3D transforms. All right, so we're going to finish up this lesson by talking about how can we do multiple attributes for the transform property, or methods, I suppose. Okay, so we're going to say that we want to transform, and we want to then, let's say we're going to put all these into one item here, div ID called transforming. We're going to say we want that to translate, and remember we do this in pixels. We want it to go, how many pixels do we want to go over to the right? We'll do 200 pixels. How many pixels do we want to go down? We'll go 200 pixels. Okay, so that's translate. Let's just make sure that that's working the way we want. Great. Actually, let's bring that up a little bit. So let's make that 150 pixels. And then, now here's the key. I can put multiple methods in here, but I'm only going to have one semicolon. So you keep putting in all your methods into one sentence, right? One rule. And that lets you do multiple things in one line, or multiple adjustments in one line. So what else do we want to do? We want to scale it, and we'll scale it 1.25 high, so that's 125% bigger, and then 150% wider right there. Now remember, my semicolon's down here at the bottom. That's just going to indicate that I'm done, okay? Great, good. Now I want to rotate it. How many degrees do I want to rotate it? I want to rotate it 45 degrees. I said 45 degrees. Okay. Good. And now I want to skew it. And I'm going to skew along the X angle, or X axis. So we'll do 25 degrees, comma, 25 degrees. And all of this is, I'm not a geometry master. You'll just have to experiment with what you want. Okay? And so that's what I end up with as the end of this process. And what's cool is that we're about to learn how to do transitions and animation. So imagine if I go from here to this one, but this changes from here to here. That's going to look like animation. And so next lesson's going to do 3D transforms and how to do some of the same stuff that we're doing here, but in the third dimension. And then we get into transitions, and that's where you're really going to be excited. All right?